This is an infrared sensor clip with the uploader defined title to November 2020 call sign. Call sign observes and tracks UAP 1 of 2, likely recorded from a United States military platform in November 2020. The image is monochrome and the sensor is actively panning, keeping a darker area of contrast near the center of the field of view for the majority of the clip. Over several minutes, that area grows relatively brighter, and late in the sequence, a second area of contrast crosses the upper right of the frame as the sensor moves to follow it. For nearly 5 minutes, the camera holds one feature and then shifts to the other, tracking both contrast areas as they transit the scene. The footage appears in a collection identified by the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office AARO after a March 6, 2026 request from 8 members of the United States House of Representatives for access to 51 potentially UAP-related records that AARO had determined were held across Department of War and Intelligence Community Systems. AARO assessed that this particular clip is likely derived from an infrared sensor aboard a United States military platform operating within the United States Central Command Area of Responsibility in November of 2020. A user first uploaded the file to a classified network that same month, and the clip was made public on May 22, 2026 as part of the Pursue release. AARO also notes that many materials in the collection lack a substantiated chain of custody. On screen, you can track how the sensor behavior dominates the shot. Early in the clip, the panning keeps the low contrast areas centered, apparently to maintain the target inside the field of view. The relative intensity of that area increases gradually through the recording, not as a single flash, but as a sustained brightening. Then a second contrast feature transits the top right of the screen, and the camera moves again to keep that new area within view. The motion of the sensor is steady and deliberate rather than jittery, suggesting an operator or automated tracker is maintaining lock on changing heat or contrast signatures. The agency supplying the collection describes the written scene notes as informational and warns against treating the short description as an analytical judgment or a factual determination about what the sensor observed. In other words, the written annotation that accompanies this clip is not itself a forensic conclusion about the object or event. That caution is important because the underlying record set has chain of custody questions and because the clip comes from a classified upload rather than an immediately verifiable public source. Technically, this clip is notable for being infrared imagery that shows one persistent contrast area shifting toward a second, with the sensor actively panning to maintain both in frame. It is one of 2 closely related clips in the same release that depict very similar subject matter, and AARO states they are not duplicates but distinct recordings. Analysts and archivists point to that pairing because comparing the 2 recordings can sometimes reveal whether a feature is a sensor artifact, a platform motion effect, or a separate external signature. The record also matters because it was identified during a targeted review of potentially UAP-related holdings after congressional members sought access, which is why the chain of custody issues are spelled out alongside the clip. This narration aims to provide context rather than a conclusion. The imagery shows contrast changes and deliberate tracking by an infrared sensor. The institutional record shows the file came from a classified network in November of 2020 and later entered the Pursue release with questions about custody. If you want to examine the case further, compare the companion clip that AARO lists as related and consult the official notes that accompany both files. Explore the full case file, related footage, citing reports, and our weekly UAP News podcast at UAPDrop.com.